morning and welcome to Saving America, a current events podcast hosted by Dr. David Schein. And of course, this week has been very exciting because this is presidential election week. So, of course, our topic today is going to be to talk about that. So, in the news, of course, number one, first thing is the election. So, David, why don't you tell us all about that?
You say, hey, and that's your final answer?
Okay, so we're going to focus in this first segment on the presidential election by itself. And the most interesting part about it is that it is a dead heat. There's even discussion that they may end up with a tie. I didn't know that there was an even number of electoral votes out there, but in any event, we delayed our broadcast from yesterday to today in order to hopefully have some election results. On the presidential election at the present time, Biden is slightly ahead of Trump, but the states that they're showing leaning to Trump would put Trump ahead at the moment, but neither one of them is at 270, even with the lean. So what we have happening right now in America is vote counting. And to give you an idea how crazy this is, Pennsylvania is an important state to Donald Trump. And at the moment, he is 600,000 votes ahead, which is, boy, that's a pretty big number if you ask me. However, they are saying that there is as many as 1 million votes not counted from mail-in ballots. Now, the prognosticators are saying, or the so-called experts are saying, that the majority of the mail-in ballots will be in favor of Biden. I'm not so sure because the older electorate, and Pennsylvania is a relatively older state, the older electorate, I think, has heavily gone for Trump because of the perception of protecting very simple things. Hey, protecting my retirement money by keeping the stock market up, protecting Medicare by not turning it into Medicare for all. So the older population, which now outnumbers, by the way, our younger population in the entire United States, the age switch from over 65 versus under 18 has happened. And we've touched on that a little bit in other Saving Americas. So Trump garnered some criticism, which is not unusual for Trump, because he did indicate that he thought he was winning last night. And that's really the way I saw it. That's really all he said. Hey, I am winning at the moment. And part of the reason he said that is because the scuttlebutt is that Florida was very likely to turn blue and Texas was becoming a swing state. And that neither one of those happened. In fact, rather bizarre statistic, as Florida is considered done, he won Florida by more votes this time than he did last time. And I think the reason for that, which is what's interesting if we all get in and study the weeds, is the Hispanic vote in America, which is an extremely important vote, is trending Republican. And I think it's trending Republican for several reasons. The Hispanic community is becoming more and more integrated into American life. And as they become more and more integrated, a lot of them have small businesses. A lot of them are Catholic and therefore opposed to abortion. And a lot of them have come from countries that have experimented with socialism. So it's an ignored demographic largely by the Democrats. The Democrats have taken both African-American and Hispanic votes for granted. And I think this election is a big slap in the face to say, don't do that. It's not going to work for you because these people are not just automatically in your back pocket. And of course, people point to Florida and keep talking about the Cuban American vote because, of course, there's a very strong Cuban American community in South Florida. who are still upset about Castro's communist takeover of Cuba and the exiling of so many Cuban people into South Florida. But I don't think that that's really what we're seeing in that demographic. I think we're seeing a lot of older Americans. Again, Florida's one of the most popular states for retirees. And also, again, some of the younger Hispanic demographic going more strongly for Trump. So anyway, but that's what it looks like on the presidential front today. And I think we may end up in court in 2 or 3 of those races. So a lot depends on the next 3 or 4 days. We may not have even a preliminary decision before Friday is what I'm hearing. So we'll probably have to pick that up next Tuesday when we get back to our normal schedule.
And it sounds like we'll have an interesting discussion next week, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
But in the meantime, right now, of course, with all of this, we have lots of rumors going around.
Well, the weakest link. Goodbye.
Well, my favorite rumor of the week and of the year is that Biden was going to blow out Trump, and that America is so upset with Trump that they were going to just bulldoze. They were going to have the big blue wave, and they were going to increase their lead in the House. They were going to take the Senate. They were going to take the presidency, and they were going to do this, not just do it, but do it with big margins. As we just talked about, Florida and Texas both stayed in the red camp. And what's interesting is the current numbers that I'm seeing. Again, you focus on just the facts. Is that the Republicans may actually pick up some seats in the House. They won't get a majority, but they may actually pick up some seats in the House. Currently, official total is 47-47. And with one Republican flipped and another Republican flipped, but a Democrat flipped. So they're pretty much dead even. But the races that are not called as we record the show this morning indicate that they will probably have a 52-48 majority in favor of the Republicans. Now, the reason that is so significant is even if Biden squeaks out a victory, he won't be able to implement the far left agenda because the Senate will be front and center in front of it. And so you can't get any of those things done without going through Mitch McConnell, who, by the way, was one of the several senators who were targeted by the left. And Mitch McConnell won going away. There were other races, including one in Minnesota that was won by the Republican who had been targeted, and another race, I think, in Iowa. So one of the things that I think is very interesting is one of the random factors out there is a little guy named Michael Bloomberg. And Michael is one of several people that I call .com millionaires. They meandered into some weird deal and they made good on it. I don't criticize anybody for doing that. And it includes a cabal of Bill Gates and the Google people and so forth. And these folks have hit it right. And again, I never envy anybody else's success. I'm happy to be successful in America, and I don't envy their extreme success. But unfortunately, they've failed to realize the reason that they have been so successful is because of the capitalist system in America and our freedom of speech and our freedom of religion, our freedom of beliefs. And I think that's very unfortunate. In particular, Michael Bloomberg, who briefly, who by the way is a former Republican, a lot of people overlook that, but Michael Bloomberg has briefly tried to be a presidential candidate, and he had no mandate to do that, and was in the race for a very brief period of time. In fact, he came in late and he left very quickly, but it added a little bit of entertainment because I actually heard people saying that he would bump off Biden. And of course, he didn't do that. But in any event, Bloomberg by himself committed $100 million to flipping Florida and Texas. And this is what $100 million did for you. Florida went more Republican and Texas stayed Republican. And those two states represent very large numbers of electoral votes. So the good news, if there's some good news in this in this crazy year of 2020, is that $250 million didn't get you a whole lot. There were a couple of House seats that appear to have been flipped or at least stayed Democrat with a lot of help. But overall, it is becoming more and more clear that just spending a lot of money doesn't get you elected. And I think that's a good message in America. So I'm going to wrap up with that and just say, hey, it's 2020. What else did we expect?
So to close us out today, though, what are the facts about this whole election stuff?
Just the facts, ma'am.
Well, I think the major takeaways are that we in America built freedom of the press and we built freedom of speech. And it's a very sad commentary that you cannot trust massive media outlets like the major 3-4 TV channels, CNN, CNBC, and things like that, that we know that there is no reliable source for mail, for information. There's no reliable source for mail either. And it part of my strong underlying theme to saving America is that we have got to reform the bureaucratic state. We've got to do things differently. And again, even though I'm a little bit happy that the Republicans kept the Senate, the reality is they did it by keeping people who are in many, many terms, like Mitch McConnell and John Cornyn here in Texas. And my feeling about democracy is we need to increase the turn. We have got to have term limits. And it does display something that I have spoken about before, and I talk about in my book, which is one of the reasons that you have to bring in term limits is because the power of the incumbency is overwhelming. And a great example of this is that Senator Lindsey Graham in South Carolina, who is not a strong politician. If you listen to this guy talk, he's not anybody's idea of a great speaker, a great thinker. But they spent $104 million to unseat Lindsey Graham. One state, one senator, his opponent spent $104 million. And Lindsey Graham was easily reelected. 2 points here. One, apparently spending a lot of money on nasty TV ads isn't working nearly as well as it might. That's and whatever. And number two, the power of the incumbency is rather amazing. And again, it's the reason why when people say to me, well, Dave, it's a democracy. People don't have to keep reelecting Mitch McConnell or Lindsey Graham. They could elect other people. The reality is the power of the incumbency is so overwhelming that without term limits, we cannot balance that out. So again, it's 2020 all year.
Great thought. Great thought. So next week we'll have even more to report on this election.
Hopefully.
And hopefully we can announce who our next president is. So
that would be great.
David, thank you very much. Let me tell people again about your book, The Decline of America. Um, it's a book that's bipartisan, and it takes the very same evaluation points and applies them to all the presidents from Woodrow Wilson to Barack Obama. Very interesting to see what some of the other, and honestly, it's comforting to me to realize, if living in today, you somehow start feeling like, what, we've lost our country, we've lost democracy, we've lost all this. But they had some other pretty serious events that took place through the years, and seeing how they handled them, how the president did, and seeing the grade he got, which normally was not that great, is very interesting reading, and it definitely helps you feel more secure about what's going on in our country today. So stay tuned for more information on how to get your copy. It is available on Amazon. And so we will be talking more about some opportunities to get it for 99 cents on the weekend after Thanksgiving. Thank you all for joining us today. Feel free to share the podcast with other people. If you're watching it right now with Facebook Live, then thank you for joining us. And please feel free to put comments. If you're watching it later on Facebook, or if you're watching it on one of the other podcast platforms, iTunes, and then iHeartRadio, some of the others, then we'd love to have you subscribe and make comments as well there. So thank you for joining us. And David, thank you again for your insight into this crazy world that we're living in today. And
Thank you, Sandy.
We'll talk to you next week.
You bet. See you soon.